missing?
I think when it's not, is it live? When it's not live, you don't have that on, but I think.
We're on.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
All right, try this again. We'll call the September 7th Human Resources Committee to order. We'll go around the room, introduce ourselves.
Scott Kelly, Alderperson.
Don Urban, Human Resources.
Ryan Giefer, wastewater superintendent.
Linda Sorcy, finance.
Scott Young, fire department.
Aaron Paulbrook, fire department.
Herman Blevins, police chief.
Sue Schill, city attorney.
Joe Zerflu, alderperson.
And Steve Gold, alderman. All right, first item on the agenda is to review and consider approval of an increase for wastewater operator on-call pay.
Okay, so this is I'm going to refer to the executive summary in your packets. And basically the request is to move the on-call pay, it's currently at $20 per day, to increase that to $30 per day. There is a total cost increase of $36.50 per year. However, we do believe this will be offset and we will actually recognize a savings due to remote alarms, the remote alarm monitoring capability. And this is going to be, we're recommending a trial period of October 1 through May 30th. And we're also recommending that Ryan and Joe Terry have 2 reports to this committee then in January and April of 2019. So we are able to assess if this program is actually resulting in cost savings. And I am going to turn it over to Ryan to let him talk a little bit further about this request.
Yeah, so the way this all first came about was we did a SCADA upgrade here last winter, which was upgrading all of our supervisory control and data acquisition, computers, monitoring equipment. We went to radios instead of telephone copper wires. And basically with that upgrade, we were also given the ability to remotely log into our system from tablets and home computers. So if I'm sitting at home, I can log into our system, see what the plant's doing, check equipment, make changes at the plant, do all the things at the lift station throughout the city. So what we're thinking is we're going to send the operators home, pay them a little more to do so, send them home with a tablet, have them log in on some of their own personal time, do some monitoring of what's happening at the plant, make some adjustments if need be. But the big thing that's potentially going to save money is, currently the way it works is they get a call from our control system. They have to come in, they punch in, they get 2 hours of call to do so, and then they get paid overtime for whatever time they spend there. Some of those alarms could have been handled from their house by logging in the computer. There's certain things that they can acknowledge, there's certain things they can take offline, put other equipment online. I anticipated about 1 of the calls per week, which on average they get 2 to 3 calls per week. Usually 1 of those could have been handled from a computer at home, so that would save us the 2 hours of call time. It would save us whatever overtime they spend there. I don't think it'll be any problem saving the ratepayers money, and it'll also be compensating the operators for spending more of their time at home, looking at work things, catching when our equipment malfunctions instead of coming in the morning to a problem. They can catch it early and come in or make an adjustment on the computer. So I think it's an important thing that we do. The other thing that was referenced is I did call around to other municipalities like Marshfield, Point, Plover. They all have similar programs and they're all ahead of us on this. I think Point's at, I have it in here somewhere, $40 per day. They're all between $30 and $40 per day. So we're a little bit behind even without asking more of our operators. So any questions about what I'm kind of proposing here?
I don't have any.
I just had a question on, we're supposed to be paying them when they're working from home, but are these, I think, these is considered like a de minimis? Like if they log into their tablet and check, they're not going to get paid because it's considered, how?
I guess that was my thought was that's the reason for increasing it, but they're not going to be claiming time like hourly, no.
But they're not going to be spending a lot, it's just
No,
checking.
it'll basically be a check, yeah.
Yeah,
It'll
it's
be
not
a check.
actually working.
No,
If they do
right.
have to spend a certain amount of time, then they're going to have to be paid
Right,
for
yeah,
their
so if they
time
have to log in
probably.
and all of a sudden they have to
Yeah.
spend time, then I think they have to be paid legally, right?
Right,
You know, so I was just gonna make it a requirement, if you're gonna get the extra $10 per day, you have to log in at least once and make a check,
right.
you know? And then when they get called, then they can log in before coming to the plant and see what's happening. And if not, be able to remedy the situation, at least be prepared for what they're coming into.
That was kind of my question too, raising the on-call per day to $30, but then if the program's discontinued, dropping it back to 20, that would be because now they're not able to do any of this if you discontinue?
Yeah, I guess I don't know how we approach that, you know, because I think if they're doing work, they still have to get paid.
Right.
So likely, I just won't let them take the tablet home if we can't do that, you know, otherwise I think you'd run into problems. Because right now, before we even have been paying them more, I've told them, if you want to take it home and have it as a benefit, you can. And 2 out of 3 do that, and they use it regularly. But the other gentleman said, you know, if I'm not going to be compensated, I'm not going to.
Yeah, and
So it does, yeah, I see your point there.
I'm not trying to cause more
Yeah,
problems for you, but the on-call was just to basically keep your phone on you or whatever.
and be available.
And stay available,
within
you
30
know,
minutes,
don't
yeah.
go way out of town.
So, yeah, I mean, maybe after this pilot program, we maybe would need to develop like because right now it's 2 hours pay to come into the plant.
Right.
We could develop a half hour, an hour of pay to make adjustments on the computer maybe,
Sure.
or, you know, I don't know. Maybe that's something we need to further talk about.
Yeah, I don't know, I mean, right, I think, but there's something regarding, I mean, if you're just kind of doing a check that isn't that considered, I don't know what the word is.
Well, I mean, if
de minimis or
you're
something,
talking
yeah.
about de minimis, and if you're talking about a 30-second, okay, I
Yeah,
checked it and
right.
it's fine,
Mhm.
that's different than,
Mhm.
oh, I checked it and now I have to log on for
I
half
just,
an hour.
yeah, right,
Then you have to pay
Right.
for that half
So
an hour.
if they get a call, if the plant calls and says alarm in this building, and they log in, at that point they need to take 2 hours pay, you're saying? Because they're
No.
responding.
No,
Not
it's
necessarily.
15 minutes.
But they should get
Okay.
15 minutes of pay.
So they're gonna get the overtime for working outside of
Right.
time, but they're not gonna respond because they're not coming to the
Right.
plant, okay.
So not driving in.
Yeah.
Sure.
But yeah, if they're work 15 minutes, you pay them for 15 minutes.
Okay,
Yeah.
that makes sense.
Because it's,
Is the computer gonna track the amount, or computer tablet, is that gonna track the amount of time that they're working on there
Yeah.
too? So it's not like they take a 15-minute problem, fix it, and say, oh, I spent an hour on it.
That's a good point. No, yeah, we can see literally as soon as they get on what they do, where they do it, how they do it, we can see everything. So I'll know if they put a half hour on their timesheet, I'll know if it was actually a half hour or not.
because I know some people, they check their emails and stuff like that because they want to.
Right,
And
and that's
that's
kind
on
of
them, but if
same.
it's something they have to do, then I think that's a little different,
It is, yeah, I agree.
so.
So I guess this, if we require one check, you know, that's sort of the same thing, and then
Sure.
if it's an actual alarm or a call, they claim their time, but not the call into the facility, which would save us money as well, too, so.
I think it makes sense, but I have a hard time approving it because we have a number of, I feel some confusion from all our discussion. You know, I mean, I'd like to have it more laid out as to if they're, you know, if they're going to be doing some work, then what would it be? I mean, right now, we're talking about from $20 to $30. That makes sense. But then now, shouldn't we have incorporated with this other idea that if they're doing work and how much would it be, and at one particular proposal?
And I could make that part of my, after the 6-month pilot program, you know, because we're gonna need to see how this goes to sort of develop some of those expectations, I think. Because right now, I really don't know how successful it's gonna be without them
Okay.
actually doing it, you know?
Then would they get back pay after the 6 months? All I'm saying is,
Well, I think
If
we're
they
gonna,
do- I mean, if they do any type of work, they should be recording that, we should be paying them, that shouldn't be any back pay. I mean, if
Okay.
they're doing work from home,
But I think when we roll this out, then I think what you're saying is, when we roll this out, we have to set those expectations, that if you're doing actual work, you get paid for what you're actually working.
Mhm.
Is that
Right.
what you're saying?
right,
Yeah.
Okay.
I feel more comfortable looking at this as a trial, but then putting all the other details, and then for those that have used it for the 6 months, then they would have to go back and get that paid. Right?
Well, I think
They
the
would get
beginning
the
of the
pay
6
upfront.
months,
Yeah.
we're gonna
Yeah.
start giving them the pay,
Oh,
isn't that the?
Yeah.
Oh, yes,
Yeah.
yeah, I
Okay.
agree with that.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, then.
Yeah, at least, I think the 6 months will give us some clarity.
Okay,
I hope.
makes sense.
So I think, just to clarify, you're asking that when this is rolled out,
Mhm.
that we go into specific parameters around what constitutes paid time then,
Right.
in addition to the $30.
Right,
Okay,
That makes
and we
sense.
can do that.
Mhm.
all right.
Okay.
I can have a written memo to the operators and to this committee before we roll it out too.
All right.
Any other discussion? With that, I would make a motion to increase the wastewater on-call operator pay to $30 per day with a trial program for operators to monitor the facility from home by remote access, with a review in 6 months to see what needs to happen with the program, or if we're gonna continue it.
I'll second it.
All right. Any other discussion? All in favor? Committee will vote.
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Ayes have it. Next, we are going to look at review and consider the fire department, finance department, clerk shared position in connection with the potential contracted services for ambulance billing.
And this is the last attachment in your packet, and this is the job description, the shared job description, fire and finance, and it is titled Department Clerk. This is connected to, if you were at Tim's meeting, finance meeting on Tuesday, this is connected to that. This is related to the contracted services for billing, and this is a modified position. So this would be a shared position between fire and finance departments. This individual would provide clerical administrative support for the fire chief and for the deputy chief, as far as, and also assist with finance, particularly in their very busy seasons. Such tasks as collecting tax payments, and that is very busy December, January, April, and July. So this would be a shared position where the person would be located at the fire station number 1, and also here part of the time as well, in the finance areas.
Okay. Scott, you have anything on it?
No, I really could use that position, so with the EMS billing, the contracting, it frees up a position where we have somebody there to help with the everyday tasks and phone calls, and so I think it would work very well in conjunction with the contracting of EMS billing.
I'm a little confused. I was at that finance meeting, and we're outsourcing collecting of taxes or
EMS.
fees, EMS.
Yeah.
So for outsourcing, that's cost 54,000-ish, if I remember correctly, then we must be saving money somewhere. I mean, why would we create a new position if we're outsourcing?
It's not a new position, it's a modified
Modified?
or a replaced position, if you wanna look at it that way.
Okay.
The individual that is handling the ambulance billing, that is.
That's all she does. She provides no support for answering phones for the most part, or daily tasks that we could have her doing. Pretty much her sole responsibilities were EMS billing. So as far as savings goes, we have software, our billing software, we no longer need to pay for. We have copying costs we're saving. There was postage we'd be saving. There was a lot of other savings beyond her wages. I understood there was a halftime position that this would be combined with. I don't want to speak out of turn. So that position would no longer be needed,
So-
from what I understand.
What was who was the person that was doing this?
Diane Sloat,
How many hours a week did she work?
40,
So she'll still work 40 hours?
yes. but we'd share her with finance for tax.
We're short in finance?
Yeah, currently we don't, we used to have someone that would come up seasonally and help us with tax collections. We haven't had that
Okay,
for this past season, and it just became, you know, it was kind of one of those things we tried, it just became where it was just too much volume of traffic to really concentrate on collecting taxes plus all the other daily things that we have to do. So currently, we have this position in our budget for a tax collector, but it's vacant at this point. So basically, what we're doing is we're combining an administrative support in the fire department with this to then modify the billing clerk's position.
okay, that makes sense.
And basically, when you look at it from a budget standpoint, I truly believe once we contract out ambulance billing and we get more, our collections get more timely, this will probably be a budget neutral type thing where we're retaining that person, contracting out, and addressing some other needs in the organization. That'll be pretty close to budget neutral, because I anticipate that our collections will go up because of the outsourcing of the ambulance billing.
Yeah, well, I like the idea of outsourcing. I think that makes sense. It's good for the citizens using it, timeliness and everything else, so that made sense. I was just curious as to how this all will fall in play.
Yeah, so the foot traffic should be expected to handle. There's a lot of, in the job description, responsibilities we have her tasked with. She'll be expected to do those, and it would be just a tremendous help for me and the shift commanders. It's unbelievable, the phone traffic and the foot traffic in there, and it would free up these individuals to do the jobs that we want them to be doing.
So if it's budget neutral,
Yeah,
you
and
get better service.
Right, and also that we'll be able to use this person, have more flexibility, be able to serve in some relief clerical needs. So if needs some coverage in other departments, we have the flexibility of using this person during elections, especially the bigger elections. They always need help in the clerk's office just with a lot of the administrative tasks. That this position will create a lot of flexibility. We'll be able to cover other departments also.
That's good. Makes sense.
Anything else?
I support everything that's been said, and I think it's just sort of like this part two of the whole EMS billing component, and talking with the chief as well as Tim and Dawn about it for some time now. I think it makes sense to have more flexibility in the utilization of our human resources, right? There's seasonality to a lot of things we do in different departments, and the more flexibility we have to allocate people in those seasonal responsibilities, the better.
And entertain a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the new, is this a new position or modified
You
position?
can call it modified.
Modified position for a department clerk with finance and fire.
I'll second.
All right, with that, any further discussion? Committee will vote. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, ayes have it. Next item, review referral from Alderperson Blazer concerning the city's current employee residency requirement. And you want to start with that, Dawn?
Sure. So we had received this as a result of a referral from the last council meeting, and we had received today, Alderperson Koth and I had received today an email from Alderperson Blazer indicating that he would like us to discuss residency, and he would be okay with the 30 miles, which is, I believe, and I'll have both the fire chief and the police chief speak to this in a moment. So that is, I believe, the referral and representative of the referral. Did you want to say a few words?
Yeah, chiefs, before you guys, I don't have any problem with us opening up the boundary limit to attract and retain employees. I just have basically a concern on response time. So like, from the southern boundary of the city, I work down in Friendship on 13 and 21. So I work for the city, I would be at that right about at that 30-mile limit from the southern boundary. When I have council meetings to leave for council, I have to leave by 5 p.m. I have to leave work. And that puts me getting into line of sight at City Hall at about 5:40, 5:45. So even at that 30-mile limit, that's a 45-minute drive at 30 miles. And that's to be honest with you, Chief, that's pushing the speed loss just a little bit. So I guess what I would look for from you guys is if we do this and there was a situation where you needed extra officers to show up or you needed extra firefighters for a situation, what do you guys expect as a reasonable time limit to respond?
I can take that.
And then the other question that I would have on this is to hold employees accountable to the response time. What would be in line for corrective action should you have an employee that's at the absolute maximum of the 30-mile limit, and say you guys set 1 hour response time and you have an employee that they're constantly showing up like 1 hour 15 minutes or 1 hour 45 minutes, and it's just, I couldn't get here in time. Snowstorm, construction, et cetera.
Okay, initially this was, when it was proposed by Alderman Blazer, it was proposed as a unlimited, just completely eliminate the boundaries whatsoever. We, in effect, the fire chief and I, we countered with 30 miles. And if, I had written a letter expressing my views, if we had gone with the unlimited mileage and you know, just for the sake of argument, we had somebody who decides they want to live in Wausau, that you're a grown adult, you know what time you're supposed to be at work, and just like you were addressing, if we had a problem with somebody being late, then there are plenty of remedies that are already in the policies and procedures for you know, addressing that. I am in favor of a 30-minute response time, and I have been all the way through. That's why I proposed the 30 miles limit rather than having it be unlimited, because I have people in the department that have to be here quickly. And part of that was that if it became unlimited, we were gonna set a policy that if you were in a specialty position such as SWAT, detectives, K-9 handler, or senior administration of the police department, that you had to be at the department within 30 minutes of being called. And that was we were gonna do that as our policy if this was passed. I still stick to that's what my expectations are.
Okay.
And our policy is gonna be if you go beyond that 15-mile current boundary and live outside that 15-mile up to the 30-mile for immediate staffing needs and off-duty transfers, you're not eligible to do those, because we're not gonna wait, you know, like you said, 40-45 minutes to come in and do immediate staffing needs, or we're not gonna have the hospital wait 40-45 minutes for a transfer that they want moved. That's the way I'm looking at it. I believe that could be done internally with an SOG, regardless of what you decide to do with the 30-mile.
No, they have an ordinance right now that sets the residency, so.
Well, the
they're
residents.
gonna have to decide.
What's that?
Oh, well, I'm just saying, if they say you can live 30 miles, I don't think you can say you have to.
Well, you can,
That's
but you're not eligible
closer.
for emergency call-ins or off-duty transfers.
Oh, okay, I see what you're saying.
Or SWAT, K-9 detective, or anything
Right,
else.
okay.
And I've been very upfront with Aaron, and then we have another member looking at if they go outside of the current 15-mile boundaries, that he's not.
Well, that'll have to be, but some of that might get into negotiation though, right? In terms of treating them differently than what's in the ordinance, because their current contract says they get what it's in the ordinance, so we're kind of,
Okay.
yeah. But well, I mean, that's why I think it should just, probably would make more sense to maybe negotiate it, but it's.
Go ahead.
Just a couple things, and I know, if you're not paying someone to like be on call, and if the chief here expects a 30-minute response time, and, well, assuming 60 miles an hour, you know, for 30 miles, I don't see how you could really, I guess, discipline them for not, you know, being within that driving time, or take any kind of action, because they're not, I mean, they're just, this is their off-duty time. And then what, I mean, maybe the ordinance could cover these things, but what if someone does put in for SRT and a year later they move beyond that? Can we pull them
Yeah,
off?
I've thought of that.
So-
And it's a big question, but you knew the expectation when you joined the team. If you decide you wanna move, then I guess you're gonna have to make a decision.
And so I would like to just make sure, and Aaron, obviously, I've talked to, and I support expanding it, the residency, but I wanna make sure that we give the department heads, you know, that flexibility to be able to address those issues.
And one thing, we're not against it. I believe that expanding the limits would help us as far as recruiting and retention of people, especially when, you know, at this point, we're getting 7 people applying for a police department job.
Right.
Maybe some of those people that are just outside that 15-mile limit would have applied but I also have a police department to run, and I have emergency services that it has to be reasonable.
Chief Young, for your ambulance transfers or any of the situations that you outlined that you would not make an employee eligible if they were within 15 to 30, to staff that right now, is that people sign up for on-call to do that, or how do you currently handle that?
We have an app called I Am Responding, so we send out a request that we have this off-duty transfer going to Wausau or Marshall Medical Center, and they just respond through that app, and then we work off of a list of who we call in. So, and as far as living 15 or out to 30 miles, I think for bigger incidences, you know, we're on scene, we're mitigating the scene. If they're in 40 minutes later, that's kind of when our initial members on scene are running out of air. It's when they need to go through rehab. They could be valuable in that situation. As far as we've got 3 ambulances out and we have nobody left to cover an engine or the next ambulance, that's where it's not acceptable for a 30 to 40 minute response time. So that's kind of where I was coming from. Between that 15 and 30 mile. If we opened it up, that's your choice to live beyond 15 miles, but I don't see how we could utilize them for transfers or emergency call-ins for immediate staffing needs.
Based on your years with the fire department and experience, how many instances have there been where you've had to call in a large number of off-duty personnel?
Weekly.
Weekly?
Yeah. Just in the last month, 3 or 4 structure fires where we utilize off-duty. So.
In any of those cases, would have mutual aid from another municipality been beneficial?
Well, we use that. We also utilize that. So.
Okay.
So when we go to, it's a MABUS system, it's a mutual aid box alarm system. We use Grand Rapids and Port Edwards primarily into the city, and then we call back some of our off-duty members too. You know, to run our equipment as members go through tanks of air and they need to go through rehab. We need people familiar with our equipment and our apparatus to run it, so we utilize our members that are called back in. I don't see expanding from 15 to 30, that affecting those operations per se, but.
I kind of have an idea of a motion of how I want to make it in my mind, but before we change anything here, to send it to the council, and because, you know, we have other considerations. Thank goodness we have Sue here to help.
Well, yeah, I mean, you have to differentiate between when you say something is a response time or something is an actual residency requirement, and then whether it affects the contract in terms of they have rights to have these, to do these things, but now we're saying if you live in a certain area, that affects that, and that might have to be bargained, and so I guess yeah. Whereas if it was just a flat residency, then, you know,
So,
I guess.
so what I'm thinking of, and please, chiefs, weigh in on this if you'd like, is to expand the residency to 30 miles with the expectation of a 30-minute response time, just so we have that set, but to leave the rest for any policies that you want to set, to leave that for negotiations at contract time with the unions. Is there anything wrong with that as a motion, Sue?
Okay, so you're saying it's 30 miles from the boundary and then,
30-minute response time.
so each of those employees has to then be able to respond within 30 minutes, so if they live, okay.
If you're,
But I don't think they were necessarily saying that every person would need that. they'll write that it needs a 30-minute response time?
Just
Is that what, I guess,
about response time, I mean, I guess I don't see what that has to do with residency. There's nothing saying these people have to come in. I mean, if you
I'm
answer the
saying
phone, you
this
can
is
get
a
ordered
wording
in.
the ordinance.
But what if they're like, oh, private number? I mean, you know, it's
Yeah, the only problem is that if the guys on the SWAT team did that on a regular basis, they would be on the team.
specialty positions, of course.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely. But, I mean, they're not really on call. You know what I'm saying? I mean,
Okay, so,
maybe they're at a wedding or something, I mean,
I think the time is, there's too many variables in the time. I mean, if you have from 15 to 30, that's consistent. But the 30 minutes, what happens if you can't train or whatever?
Yeah.
But the 30 minutes, I think, is confusing for me, to have ramifications to a person, you know, fine them or,
yeah.
you know, I think, but the consistency of 30 miles makes sense to me. You know, I don't know.
And do we wanna necessarily wanna?
Can I clarify real
Tell your
quick?
department.
Sure.
I don't know if I had stated it quite, my suggestion was going to be that, and I may have said this earlier, if it had gone to just the open borders, unlimited,
Unlimited, right.
it was gonna be a 30-minute response time, but I can live with 30 miles,
Okay, good.
was what I thought.
Yeah,
Makes sense to me.
I'm on the same page. Yeah.
okay. So at, this is all ask again, at 30 miles, what would you expect for response time for your personnel?
That would be a reasonable amount. 30 miles, you said 45 minutes,
Mhm.
would not be unreasonable. I'd like them here a little quicker if I had a hostage barricade or something, but, you know, they gotta get there safely to be of any use to me.
And it's a little difference from us, and I don't know how I can make it any clearer. If we open it up and we're generous to move it from the 15 to the 30, if you choose to live outside the current boundary limits, you're not eligible for transfers or emergency call-ins, just due to the fact 45 minutes for an emergency call-in doesn't help us out, because we have
It is.
5-person minimum staffing needs to fight fires. And if you choose to go beyond that 15 miles, that's your choice. But along with that choice comes, you know, the consequence that we're not using you for immediate staffing needs, emergency call-ins, and off-duty transfers. So the minute thing doesn't work for me. And if you live at 15.2, you're outside of the 15 miles. If you live at 29, you're outside of it. You're not eligible for immediate staffing needs. But if you live within that 15 miles, that's the benefit, for me, of living within the current 15 mile. You will be eligible for immediate staffing needs.
All right, how about we try this then? We can expand the limit to 30 miles. And then provision for the police department is you are required to respond within 45 minutes. And then provision for the fire department, that if you are within the 15 to 30 mile range, you are not eligible for the off-duty transfers or
Yeah, immediate emergency call-ins.
immediate emergency call. Sue, could we do that with the parentheses for police and then parentheses for fire?
You can do it differently for them. My concern, I guess, if I understand him correctly though, he just wants the 30 miles and he doesn't care about the response time.
The 30 miles was my
Right.
concession.
So they would need a 45-minute response time.
The PD,
Or
45.
the PD.
PD's 45 minutes.
PD, 45-minute response time, fire, you're just not
Okay,
available.
but what if you don't, what if you live within the 30 and it takes more than 45 minutes? I mean, is that making you ineligible for SWAT and,
This thing is
why, that's what
Yeah.
I'm saying, why can't,
It's
why
a
can't you
problem
just
I
say you
didn't
gotta
have
live
a couple
within
of weeks
30
ago.
minutes?
Yeah, I don't like, when I need the SWAT guys, I need them, and I need them in a hurry. 45 minutes, if you live at 30 miles, 45 minutes is a safe time. I'd rather have them quicker, but I don't want them getting into a wreck on the way here because they've gotta beat that 30-minute timeline.
Or weather.
So 45 minutes is a reasonable time to drive 30 miles, I would think, if you were following all the traffic laws in an off-duty vehicle on the way to work. So I want people to be safe.
But so my point is that the 30-mile limit would be okay with you.
Yes,
without
30-mile
any
limit is
response
okay,
time.
yes, with the
Yeah.
45-minute response time for the SWAT.
Any response
Well,
time.
well, any
She's
response-
saying
Any response time.
You're saying 30 miles.
30 miles is fine with me.
And, right, okay, so I'm just saying that the 45-minute, you wouldn't need that, because you're saying if we're requiring everyone to live within 30 miles,
I could live without I guess I could go without the 45 minutes, yes, if we're within 30 miles.
yeah. And then my only concern would be how this might affect the current contract of saying certain fire department employees that live between 15 and 30 now are ineligible for certain things that might be in the contract right now, and I guess we'll just have to work through that. So I guess if the motion was,
I don't even know if that's in the contract, Sue, about.
well, the contract right now says they have to live within 15 or whatever the city ordinance might say.
Okay.
So I guess arguably this is expanding that, and so if the argument, oh, sorry, I don't really want to talk about their contract, but the argument is that they pretty much waived their argument to what the residency says by saying they'll agree with whatever. So I guess a strong interpretation could be you just say what it is for fire right now and then assume that it'll be, it's gonna be consistent with their contract to allow you to do that.
Because everybody right now lives within, you know what I mean?
Right,
So if
absolutely,
you
absolutely.
choose to take advantage of this expansion of,
Right.
you've waived your
So
right
then you
to
would
certain
be-
privileges.
Right, all city employees that are subject to this would be 30 miles with the exception of fire department employees. These are all the sworn employees would be subject to
Yes.
that. That if they lived over 15 miles, they still have to be within 30, so it doesn't matter, it's
Yeah.
not even. If they live over 15, they would be ineligible for emergency call-ins and off-duty transfers.
Yes. They would be, we'd call them for staffing needs
Right,
for,
right.
in the morning for, somebody calls in sick, they'd be eligible for that. It's that emergency
Right.
staffing needs we need, and it doesn't work
Okay.
for 40 minutes, so. Joe?
I have a problem putting, a response time, as we did clarify that the 30 miles distance is, assuming a 45-minute response time. So as long as we didn't have an actual time, I kind of have an issue with saying you gotta be here in X amount of minutes or whatever. And also in the fire department's case, I wonder then if we, shouldn't somehow limit the number of people that could live outside that way, or if that is even fair to do. Maybe to a certain percentage of the fire department, and after that, well, sorry, then you gotta be within 15 miles. I mean, because in theory, 100% of your department could live, in whatever city that's 25 miles an hour, or 25 miles an hour, 25 miles away or whatever, so.
In theory, they could, I
Right.
highly,
I highly,
I don't think my department's gonna
yeah, I
sell
don't
their
see,
houses and move
but
as soon as.
and you have 3 shifts,
yes.
so I mean, one, depending on the time of day, one just got off or whatever. I'm just wondering how you're manning, how having people available is gonna be affected by that.
Yeah, I don't see it being affected that much, I just don't, but I guess you don't know if maybe 10 years down the road, there's a complete switch, but I don't know, can't answer that. When we did the unlimited, I think that was being discussed too, then we did have a cap on it, no more than 6, and then we fall back to the restrictive 15 miles, but, I think people do like this town, they do like working here.
Yeah.
The proximity of being by the station is appealing to most people. And
Most people aren't gonna wanna commute an hour to
Most
work.
people like a 6-minute drive to work.
But,
Yeah.
like I said, I know I might be getting in the weeds a little too much here, but I just wonder if it would be in our best interest to have something like that in place.
Your Honor?
I think, I appreciate the discussion, because I think it's hard to pick an arbitrary, or picking winners and losers, and there's a whole dynamic with all of this stuff. I guess my big issue is taking a step back further. I think we've got the cart before the horse. We're discussing this in September. We're on the heels of renewing or renegotiating contracts, and this is something that comes through that process. So that would be my 2 cents. If it goes to the council and in this past, I'm gonna take a good hard look at it and say, I think we compromised our position and may consider, sending it back to the council. I mean, I think, why now? Why 30 miles? Why 45 minutes? I mean, I think, at a committee level discussion, I think these are the types of things that should be discussed with a real validated plan behind it. I'm not seeing a real pressing need to advance a decision. I think it's good to have discussion and continue to move toward resolution. I just believe that it has to be, or should be, more appropriately done through negotiations, and then ultimately, both bargaining units agree to this and we move forward. So that would be my 2 cents, and take it for what it's worth.
The only, not arguing with anything you just said, but the only thing I would throw back is, this is not really a police department, fire department issue. This is an ordinance of, all the department heads have to follow this, right?
No.
Paul Lawler, Joe Terry, don't they all have to live?
Three other employees, public works director,
Okay.
parks and building supervisor, and
Sure.
public works
Joe's
superintendent.
definitely not gonna move, he's got a nice setup there, but I mean, my point is, there's 2 different associations, that'll be affected, and then there's a handful of non-represented people, so I don't,
But we're providing a benefit that should be negotiated.
and I mean, I guess we could negotiate both contracts and then decide on the ordinance, but, I mean, pretty much at any point, we're either gonna be before or after a contract, so I don't know, that's just my opinion.
I think what the problem's been though is Aaron, right?
Yes.
Who wants to go live closer to Stevens Point, has been trying for this, and the, correct me if I'm wrong on this, but what you communicated to me was, on one hand, the union tells you that this is a city ordinance issue, so you go to the city tells you that this is a negotiable item, so this issue's been ping-ponging back and forth of whether it's ordinance or union negotiated, and in the meantime, nothing's getting done.
Correct. I mean, I approached the HR committee 2 years ago, and we went in through a contract, and they, at that time, said it wasn't a negotiable thing. So that's my...
Who said what? Who said it wasn't a negotiable thing?
I was told that they didn't want to discuss it in negotiations.
Right, okay.
It might be the
Your
union,
union
so.
didn't, yeah.
The part of the reason I brought it up is just a thing to put in. I understand and I respect what the mayor's saying, but we do have a huge recruitment issue at the fire department right now. We have 2 openings and we cannot fill them. Hopefully with this new internal list, we'll get one of the positions filled, but we're gonna sit empty until next May. And then to, Aaron losing this, I know Stevens Point has issues, he probably could be hired on Point tomorrow. Not being able to fill the open positions is a struggle, and to lose quality employees that have been here for 10 years due to a restriction of the 15 miles is just, to me, kind of scary, to be quite honest. So I understand where Aaron's coming from, and that's my point of it, is more of a recruitment and retention tool, so for whatever it's worth.
All right, I try to look at this kind of like a balancing act to give something to everybody here, so we can compromise on something and get something done. I'm open to the 30 miles, all right? But then also I think maybe as far as the terms that surround the 30 miles, that could go into the union negotiation contracts when you guys start negotiating your contracts. Because obviously, police and fire are both different. Fire department, you guys have different needs. Police department provides a totally different service. So if we open it up to 30 miles, that would take care of the residency thing, and then I think it would be up to you guys with your bargaining units to go through and lay out the expectations of if you want to live in these outer limits, 15 to 30 miles or whatever, that you guys can then hammer out exactly what you would expect from your employees as far as response time or being able to sign up for emergency transfers or anything of that nature. Does that sound reasonable?
Sure.
And I don't think between now and the time that contracts go into, I don't think that you're gonna have a mass exodus of firefighters or police officers going buying property in Adams Friendship, Black River Falls, or any other place, so I think we could be okay till the negotiations come up, and then that'll give you guys time to think about policies and mold it to make it a little more fitting for your departments. You see anything with that, Dawn, or?
Well, I wonder if you could, not being familiar with all your SOGs, but is that something that you can address through an SOG?
What's, between the 15 and 30?
Yeah.
I think if we're gonna do it in negotiations, that would be part of the negotiation. If it can be an SOG, it can easily be incorporated into that.
Chief Blevins, anything?
I'm just mulling over what I can impose administratively as to what I have to bargain for as far as those types of things. I probably need Sue's advice on that, is whether or not I could, if I have to negotiate membership in a special unit, or if that's something administratively I can lay down in policy.
Sue, Zach?
I just think, I don't want to throw cold water on the whole argument. I mean, I think we need to address and be flexible and nimble, especially when recruitment issues and retention issues are of, I fully support discussion on it. I think we need to adapt where we need to adapt. Am I a pro-residency guy, that if you work for the city, you should live in the city? I've said that since day one, yes, but we live in reality and that's not the case. So, the state's already preempted us a number of times and told us what our authority is, and it gets loosened or shrunk every year in this regard. So, I just think that we need to have some more discussion on it.
To that point though, why does residency have to be dependent on union contracts? I mean, to me, that should just be a policy the city sets. I mean, if an association wants to tweak it somehow and maybe make it more restrictive on their members, that's fine, but I mean.
Well, it can only go less restrictive.
Okay,
No.
but, so then the fire department wants, the union wants to bring this to the table, but the police department doesn't. So I mean, is the conversation just over, or?
We bargain separately,
No.
right? So I
Yeah,
think
we
it's-
bargain separately. with
Okay,
them, so.
okay, I just throwing that out there.
All
I'm
right.
trying to
Well, and
wrap my head
maybe,
around
and maybe the union doesn't want it, but the city wants it from a recruitment standpoint, so I think there might be some
Sure.
reasons for us to, uniquely have interests, separate interests in both instances too.
Well, I think we're all on the same page, I think.
I think so.
Something
yeah.
needs to be.
This, I'm gonna try for a motion here, I'm gonna throw this out and we'll see how it goes. I make a motion that we expand the residency to 30 miles with the ability for each of the unions, with the ability for restrictions, reasonable restrictions to be set within those boundary requirements.
You mean by the chiefs?
By the chiefs.
I'll second that as long as there's not an issue with the
Yeah.
contracts. I mean, as long as it's legal, or
Whatever
whatever.
the chiefs or department heads.
Department heads. Well, actually, the other three are department heads. Public Works and whatever the other.
I mean, to include the department heads and all
Can you second that?
I second it.
All right. Chief Young, Chief Blevins, does it sound okay to you guys?
Well, I don't want to hamstring the city in any way, so I sent a letter. My letter, I think, speaks clearly of my belief on residency, so I'll leave it at that.
that. And I think your wording leaves me some wiggle room to hammer this thing out with like I said, I don't see any of my folks, selling their houses and moving anytime soon, so
Okay.
I have time to tweak this.
And Sue, this leaves us in a good position for the.
Well, I'm gonna have to review, to make sure that is something that they can do and have discretion to do. Obviously, they can't go under the 15-mile, they have to allow them to live 15 miles and participate probably fully in anything
right, we have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? All that, committee will vote. All signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Ayes have it. At this point in time, we will set our next meeting date before we go into closed session. Or do we want to set that in closed session?
You can go ahead and set it.
Okay.
So if you just wanna know my availability, October 5th, I would prefer afternoon, and if we do it October 12th, anytime during the day.
I have a problem on the 5th. If we meet on the 5th, I'd like to have it early.
Okay.
So maybe the 12th would be the best.
October 12th works for me.
There would be 2 business days before full council.
Yeah, we don't wanna do that, and I'm at a conference in the Dallas.
Okay.
Okay. Well,
Getting the minutes to the packet.
set the time, and I'll do what I can.
Just try and get those agendas out.
If you do it at 8, I'd appreciate it.
What's your availability on the 5th?
We could do it at 7.
In the morning?
It's probably too early.
I-
Is that,
It doesn't matter to me, you guys decide a time.
I can be at 7.
8's just at that point for me where, you know,
Dawn, are you okay?
Yeah.
I just have the commitment on that day, so
you do, okay.
it's not just a matter of time.
Okay, our next committee meeting will be Friday, October 5th at 7 a.m. in the first floor conference room. All right, next, the committee may vote to go into closed session pursuant to Wisconsin Section 19.85, Para 1, Para E of the Wisconsin statutes, which reads, deliberating or negotiating the purchasing of public properties, the investing of public funds, or conducting other specified business whenever competitive or bargaining reasons require a closed session. In closed session, the committee will discuss negotiation strategies regarding successor labor agreements with the International Associations of Firefighters, Local 425, Wisconsin Rapids Professional Police Association, and ASME Local 1075. Make a motion for the committee to go into closed session.
Second.
All in favor signify by saying aye. Have it, and the committee is now in closed session.